Well, this is a slightly different setting, as you can see. We've come into the house. We're sitting in a corner of my study. I thought it would be just a bit different to do this. It's the first time we've done any filming in here. And I'd like to speak to you about a few serious things which affects everyone's fishing. And that's the behaviour of other people and the way in which the activities of people on different fisheries seem to govern the way that everyone else feels and thinks about themselves and about the fishing and about carp fishing in general. It particularly applies to carp fishing, but it is permeating to a certain extent into other specimen hunting like barbel fishing. And that is really social media. So this is part 2 of what I said we would do, which is 3 clips in the same day. We're going to be talking about rigs, we're going to be talking about results, and we're going to be talking about social media. But I'm going to kick off with the social media because I only started doing social media, if you can call YouTube clips social media, which maybe it isn't really, because most of the clips I do are instructional. And this is part of my legacy I'm passing on to people. It's not all about promoting the products, it's about helping other people too. And I think I feel vindicated in saying this because I haven't done a clip, a meaningful clip now for some months, 6 months or so, and I've had lots of emails. So lots of emails that I get are from people that are saying, I don't have the confidence, I'm not too sure what to do at my local club lake, my local syndicate lake. It's been stitched up by half a dozen people who have got a bait deal. You will have heard this before. Everyone's using this bait, that bait, the other bait. There's people there who are full-timers because the rules don't allow, or the rules at the club allow people to fish as long as they want. And these people are often termed full-timers, and they have obligations to their sponsors to post their catches on social media. And what actually happens is that really creates a whole commercial feel to various fisheries up and down the country. So Joe Average, who just works hard throughout the week, maybe gets a night off, one night on a Friday to fish away from the family. You know, he goes there, not only does he struggle to get a swim, but it's stitched up by the locals. And this is something which does affect your tactical approach. So very often when people call me and they ask me for advice on tactics, I want to speak to them and understand how often they fish, what they want out of their fishing, how far away the venue is from their home, and that very often governs the type of recipe, believe it or not, that I would recommend. If you're only fishing somewhere once a month, but you're doing 2 or 3 nights a week, I would recommend a slightly different recipe than if you're fishing your local lake, which is 15 minutes down the road or a short way down the road, twice a week. And in some cases, believe it or not, there are many anglers that are doing 3 nights a week, every week, on the same venue. On one of my local lakes, people are actually working from their bivvy, doing deals on their mobile phone, and actually operating their business whilst fishing. This is an unheard of thing and would only have ever happened, or has only ever happened, as a result of one thing, and that's the hair rig. Because there's no way that you could do a 3-night session and not be ill afterwards if it wasn't for the fact that nearly every bite we get today, the fish have already hooked themselves. If it was before the hair rig, in order to catch your fish, you actually had to stay awake and hit the bites. You had to wait for the bobbin to go, the line to twitch, and if you didn't hit the bite whilst the fish had got the bait in its mouth and strike the hook into the mouth, you didn't catch a fish. So the hair rig effectively changed everything. What this then did is changed the way with the social media, commercialism, sponsorship, which I'm not knocking because I'm part of it. Although I haven't sponsored anybody for 20 years. Sorry to all the guys that have written to me and asked for a deal or some kind of sponsorship, but I've reached the point in my life where I don't really need that now. But thank you very much for those that have contacted me. But let's go back to the local club or syndicate water. How do I compete? Well, I think one of the ways I can answer that is, first of all, to strip back all the things that we see which, if you like, almost govern the way that we fish today. And that is the use of liquids. That's every type of liquid food, liquid hydrolysate, and the obsession with spodding and spomming. I would say that possibly 90% of all anglers use some kind of mix, which is mixed in a bucket, which is a combination of pellets, liquid foods, liquid hydrolysates, salt, which is completely unnecessary and not good for the fishery either, particularly Himalayan rock salt. I don't know what the obsession with that is anyway. That's open up a whole new can of worms with that, to use a bait analogy. So we've got this big bucket and we spend, I'm told, and I've seen people doing it, some time spodding. And then we put an overflavor hook bait over the top of it, which is made from an inert product or popped up plastic corn, rubber tiger nuts, plastic tiger nuts, or a pop-up mix. So you're actually fishing for attraction and you're catching the fish, in my opinion, in spite of what you're using, not because of what you're using. My mantra would be to go fishing, and if you've got the opportunity to actually float fish or stalk or cast to a rolling fish, if you can do those things on your fishery, or you can find a venue which is perhaps not quite so pressured, which allows you the opportunity to go there and maybe do a little bit of pre-baiting, which does help, and fish quietly. And instead of posting your catches on social media, don't tell anybody what you're doing. If you do those things, you will straight away find that you might start enjoying your own fishing an awful lot more. Because my thought is, well, what is the point of sharing the bait you're using, the place you're fishing, and what you're catching with other people? Because surely, when you do that, you've ruined the advantage that you've just gained with all the work you've put in doing what you're doing in the first place. So how can I be different? Well, there's lots of ways you can be different when you're fishing. And I think that there's a little plan that I have, is I try and do at least 6 things differently. 6 things different to everybody else. So I stopped spodding 7 or 8 years ago. I don't take a spod rod with me. If I can avoid it, I don't take a marker rod with me. And I don't cast out very often until I actually see a fish move. If I can create a feeding of security, an area of feeding security with the fish, given the swim I'm fishing, I'll try and do that with one rod on one spot. I won't bother casting a second rod out if it's a 2-rod water. Even if you're allowed to use 3 rods, I mostly never fish with 3 rods. I'll fish perhaps with 2 rods and keep 1 rod baited up, balanced up, ready to go, so I can cast that to a fish that's rolling or moving. That includes at night. So instead of sleeping through the night, because I'm doing relatively short sessions, 24 hours is my own favourite session, I can stay awake late, grab a few hours sleep at night, wake up early and watch for rolling fish. And some of the biggest fish I've caught and the best fish I've caught have been caught when the bait's only been in the water for 15 minutes or 10 minutes and I've cast to a moving fish. I do tend to recast very regularly, and I do tend to prefer throwing stick tactics and an open baiting pattern. Obviously, this is using boilies. When it comes to what bait do I use in comparison to others, if you feel, guys out there, watching this, that you're intimidated by the time that other people put in and by the perhaps, field tester scenario, sponsored scenario of other people, don't worry about it. Please don't worry about it. Because what you shouldn't be doing is comparing your time, your results, and your enjoyment to those who are either doing it as a job or earning money or free tackle or getting a free ticket for being influencers and promoters for their sponsors. You should only be comparing your results to those people who are in similar circumstances to yourself. And that's the way I've justified my own activity when I fish. I don't fish a lot, but when I do go, I try hard. I make a big effort, and I don't tell people what tactics I'm using. And I'll give you an example of that. One example would be people saying, there's a great area that's 80 yards out, 90 yards out, and there's some shallows out in the centre of the lake, etc., etc. And I might make a pretty big play on arrival of using a throwing stick and getting a few baits out of distance and casting out so everybody can see that I'm fishing at long range on this particular spot that people think is a hot spot. Whereas in actual fact, I've been to that fishery very quietly 2 or 3 times, because that's all it takes, 2 or 3 times, and I've put a little bit of bait in the margins, really close in, just out of swan depth, so 6 feet, 7 feet deep. Hopefully the ducks, if it's coloured water, the ducks can't see it either, and the coots don't see it. So what I've done is I've baited up some marginal areas and I've kept the bait trickling in those marginal areas. But people think I'm fishing at long range, whereas in actual fact, when it's dark, I reel in and lower the baits in the margins, which could be only 2 or 3 yards out from the swim I'm fishing. There's a tactic, there's a way of being different. Another way of being different is to use 2 different sizes of boilies at the same time. You can still fish an open baiting pattern, so scattered baits over a big area, or a tight baiting pattern depending on the type of area of lake you're fishing. It doesn't matter which way around you're going, but what happens is the fish will vary their suction when they come across baits of different sizes and shapes, and that will be completely different to the standard bag of 16 or 18 mil or 12 mil boilies that you've got that have been made on a machine. They're all uniform and exactly the same, and the fish find them easier to differentiate between that and your hook bait. So there's another way to be different. So we'll move quickly and straight onto rigs. You can now buy every type of made up, ready to go rig, every type of material, and every type of hook known to man. But in actual fact, they all do the same thing. So when people say, oh, what rigs do you use? I don't think I've changed my rig pretty much for years. I just use simple hair rigs. And the key thing with the hair rig is that the big difference is the type of bottom you're fishing over and the type of baiting pattern you're using. It's going to be impossible in this video clip that I'm doing now, this part 2 clip, to explain everything. But I'd like everybody watching to try and understand that when you're targeting very big fish, and this particularly applies in France, where the fish are of high average size, you need to probably think about using a longer hook length, because when these big fish move over your bait, they've got massive suction power. So as they come over the bait, they only need to sort of blow and suck in a small way, and such is the power of their suction, they can suck up a big bait off the bottom. And if you're using a short 4 or 5 inch link, or a chod link, or something like that, they're not going to take it into their mouths, and you won't get such a good hook hold. So my advice would be, if you're targeting big fish, use a longer hook length, say 9 or 10 inches, and a longer hair. So a hair with plenty of play from the hook. So, you know, let's say in old money, an inch away from the hook, or certainly 3/4 of an inch. So you're using more of a traditional hair rig, which is going to give the fish a little bit more confidence. With the shorter rigs and the shorter hairs tied off the back, they're not really hair rigs, they're bolt rigs. And often what happens with that is that you do get hook pulls. So have a think about that. Targeting big fish, longer links. We'll move on to flavours now. We'll move on to flavours in bait, because in part 3 I'm going to talk about base mixes, particularly my 2 favourites, but we'll cover a couple of others as well. And when it comes to the flavours, the problem that I see occurring is that for those people that are making their own base mix, they're making their own base mix, and I said it in part 1, and adding too many extra additives, spices, garlic, fenugreek powder, anything that you might be buying from the supermarket, and that's going in the same base mix. Well, if you're doing that, it's not really a base mix, it's a complete bait. So you really don't need any flavour. If you are then adding, you know, amino and liver compound, shrimp extract, krill extract, you know, LO30, salmon pro, tuna extract, molasses, all sorts of sweeteners, all those things that are going in it, it is overkill to such an extent it's almost becoming repellent. So I think the rule of thumb that I would say here is, if you get the base mix about right, or you rely on a trusted supplier to use their base mix, and you make your own at home, use half the recommended dose rate of everything liquid-wise that you've been previously advised to put in. And I think you'll find that you will get much better results doing that. We'll just have a short pause there, because I've gone off on quite a tirade of information all in one go. I just need to take stock a second, and then we will finish this part 2 with a couple of points that I'd like to make, and then we will move on to part 3. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay everybody, I've just actually played that back. Everything I said on there was a lot of information, and it's, you know, rather different and a little bit serious to a lot of the clips that I've done before. But I am concerned about the social media side of things, and I do think that the immediacy of people catching fish and placing them on Instagram and, you know, Snapchat and all these other things that you can quickly put your Facebook and all that, it really does lead to a lot of problems. And I would urge everybody to think very carefully about their use of social media. There's enough press about it on the news every day, the radio and the television. So you think about what you want to get out of your own sport, and also think about the potential damage you may be doing to your own fishing and the fishing of other people if you do start promoting things on social media. Probably like lots of anglers, we'll finish up now, and like lots of anglers out there, particularly guys in their 60s, you know, my age, and younger, will have a nice collection of fishing books. And whilst I don't collect as many books now as I used to, I do have a wonderful collection of books. You can't quite see it here, it's in a bookcase just to my right. And I'm very fortunate. I knew a famous angler called BB. He wrote under the pseudonym of BB, Dennis James Watkins Pitchford. And he wrote that famous book, Confessions of a Carp Fisherman. He also wrote under a pseudonym of Michael Traherne, and I've got one of his lovely books here where he illustrated his own beautiful line drawings. This one is of a blackbird, you can see, gorgeous, singing in a tree. And you can see also that the title of this book is called Be Quiet and Go an Angling. And I'll leave you with those thoughts. See you soon. Bye.